Hello, people. Yes, it's me again, and I'm here to finish the last part of that PowerPoint. Hopefully, finish it. I've got to finish it. There's only I think 12 slides left. Before I do that, I need to let you know. Did you get my email? The very important email yesterday about the grade policy clarification. Okay, so let me explain it to you in my voice. What the district is doing, and it's district-wide, what we're doing is week by week, all of the teachers have a spreadsheet, okay? We all have your names, and we check them off if we've gotten anything from you at all. So if I've gotten one thing from you, I put a check by that. That means, well, no, I don't put a check. I put a P by that. That means you pass for the week. At the end of the 6 weeks, we count up all the weeks, the P's versus F's. F, obviously, if you fail. If I don't hear from you at all, I don't get any work from you whatsoever by the Monday after that week, 1 o'clock, then you get an F, okay? If at the end of the 6 weeks, you have more F's than P's, then you don't pass the 6 weeks. So if you have any questions about that, please ask me. You can ask me on Schoology, you can ask me by email. You all have my email. You can email me anytime. So that's just very important. So basically that means if you're the person that usually in class you don't do anything until the last couple of weeks of the 6 weeks. If you don't turn in anything to me the first week, second week, third week, fourth week, that means you already have 4 F's. If you turn everything in that's the 5th and 6th week, you have 4 F's and then you have 2 P's. Which is bigger, 4 or 2? 4, that means you don't pass the 6 weeks. You can't go back and turn in late work at the last minute. That's what the district is doing. So gosh, guys, it's very important. I don't give you that much work at all. And you know, when we were in class, I never gave you homework unless you just didn't do it in class when I gave you ample amount of time to do it. So you've got to do something and turn it into me, okay? It's just very important, okay? Even if you just watch one of these videos and you shoot an email to me and talk about what's in the video, you know, I might, not saying for sure, but I might give you credit for that. I've got to hear from you. You've got to turn in one thing a week at least, okay, to be able to pass the 6 weeks. Easy stuff, okay? You do the work. I don't even give you a number grade on it. It's either pass or fail on that work. So if you're worried about not doing the work correctly or you don't think you knew, do it anyway and just send that to me, and then you'll be covered, okay? All right, questions, email me. So we're going to finish the rest of this PowerPoint. It took me, I guess because I have so much to talk about in it, because I was a big part of it, I was there and I remember things. And Coach Ryan and I were talking one day, when he gets to the 80s, that's the decade he gets really geeky about, or 80s and 90s, because those are the years basically he lived through. And I always tell him, yeah, I spent a lot of time on the 70s because that's what I lived through. So for me, exciting stuff, okay? So let's go on and finish this big thing here. So we're going to talk about new approaches to civil rights, the new things that people did. Remember the Brown versus Board of Education, kind of a big deal in '54 that ordered an end to segregated schools. Well, if you live in a certain neighborhood, you're going to want to go to that school that's in your neighborhood, correct? Well, most white people of one sort will live together in this neighborhood, and maybe Hispanic people will live in this neighborhood, and then black people will live in that neighborhood. That's how they got around it. They would just live in the neighborhoods of the schools they went to. So obviously, your school, the one that you live close by, that's the one you want to go to, right? Makes sense. So the Supreme Court realized that people were doing this because this meant that schools were still being segregated. not by law, but just by chance. And so they ordered local governments to start busing the children to schools outside their neighborhoods. That way they get a better racial balance, okay? This is going to lead to lots of protests and riots in several white communities, because now you have black children that are being bused to white schools, okay? Parents are going to basically end up taking their kids out of public schools. They're going to start sending them to private schools, or they're going to move to districts that do not have busing. So another thing that happened was this thing called affirmative action. This basically is an active effort to improve employment or educational opportunities for minorities and women. They're trying to solve discrimination. So basically what this is saying is that, especially with your big companies, your big corporations, you have to hire so many percentage of black people or Hispanic people or women, okay? So they're going to start recruiting and hiring African Americans. And this is going to kind of maybe lead in some way to, oops, I pushed the wrong button. This is going to lead to people feeling like, wait a minute, just because I'm white and I'm not getting this, that's really not fair. So the people that were against that, they thought that there was reverse discrimination going on. And you think about it, was there? Well, a guy named Alan Bakke, he was trying to get in to the University of California at Davis Medical School. And 2 times they denied his application, 2 times. So he later found out, oh, those slots, they're being reserved for minorities. So what he's going to do, he's going to sue the school. He's going to say that the school admitted minority applicants with lower exam scores. So if your exam scores, if that's the basis for how they're going to admit you into school, and they don't, because even though your exam scores are higher than some African American or some Hispanic person or some lady, they're going to admit that other person instead of you. That is kind of what reverse discrimination is, don't you think? So what he's going to do, he's going to take it to the court, he's going to take it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is basically going to rule 5-4, kind of close, but 5-4. This is why there's an odd number of chief justices on the bench. So they'll never have a tie. 5-4 in favor of Mr. Bakke, and the university basically had violated his rights. So another thing, we've talked about Native Americans and civil rights. They were one of the nation's smallest minority groups yet. Think about it. It's weird to say that a Native American is a minority. I mean, I know what they're saying, but I mean, they were here first, right? So unemployment rate for them is going to be 10 times the national rate, really high on reservations where they live, the lot of land that has been taken by the government and given to them, saying, okay, this is your allotment of land, you can do whatever you want, have whatever kind of government you want to have on it. That's why casinos are on reservations, because they can make the rules. So the average family income for them, $1,000 less than that of African Americans. Life expectancy 7 years below that of white people. In 61, more than 400 members of 67 Native American groups are going to gather together in Chicago and develop a Declaration of Indian Purpose. They're going to ask for federal programs to create better economic opportunities. So what we're going to have happen is that Congress is going to pass the Indian Civil Rights Act in 68, and this is going to guarantee that reservation residents, they get protections of the Bill of Rights. The Ames most famous protest happened at Wounded Knee, South Dakota. We talked about that way back in Settling the West at the beginning of the year. I know you slept since then, but they killed a lot of Sioux there in 1890. Remember, kind of. We actually talk about that when we go over that review sheet that we were doing after each unit for a while, and that we don't have to do anymore because you're not going to have a STAR test. But they, what they're going to do in 73, they're going to seize the town for 70 days, and they're going to demand that their government honor its past treaty obligations. they're going to insist on changes in reservation administration. So before that happened, AIM and FBI, 2 Native Americans were killed. Both sides had a lot of injuries. So in 75, Congress is going to pass the Indian Self-Determination Educational Assistance Act. Ooh, say that 10 times fast without taking a breath. That's going to encourage tribal participation, a lot of management of federal programs, social services law enforcement, and whatnot, and you can read the rest. So Native Americans are going to win several court cases, including a lot of rights when it comes to land. They're going to be able to gain property rights to their sacred places. So here's the part I like to get kind of geeky about as well. And you guys know I get geeky about everything that has to do with history, right? So people with disabilities, they're going to say, hey, federal government, what about us? We want our civil rights. You know, we want to go to the store. We can't get in because we're in a wheelchair. We can't walk. Or we can't walk that far from point A way to point B because the parking lot is so big. We can't do that. So help us too. Makes sense. 68, the Architectural Barriers Act is going to pass. It's going to require new buildings constructed with federal funds. These have to today have ramps so people with wheelchairs can get in. If the doorways are too narrow, they have to fix their doorway and widen it. You may have been in some public restrooms before that have certain stalls with doors, and see where there used to be 2 stalls in that one room, and now you could see where they took away the wall and made it 1 because it has to be big enough for somebody with a wheelchair to get into. That's a good thing. So this is going to be the Rehabilitation Act of 73, and also Section 504 is included in that. Some of you are probably familiar with the term Section 504. This is where this comes in. No person with a disability can be discriminated against in any way by any entity that receives federal funding. In other words, what that means, if you need to go to the courthouse, okay, that's a federal funded building, and you can't get in, that's against the law. Make sense? Okay. There's going to be more. Procedures enforcing the Rehabilitation Act that established the progress. These were put into place. We're going to get the American Coalition of Citizens with Disabilities. They're going to organize a protest. They're going to conduct sit-ins in 10 different cities, about 2,000 of them. These will be at regional health and education and welfare offices. So special education is going to change. In 75, the Education for All Handicapped Children require all students with disabilities receive a free, here's the key word, appropriate education. In other words, they should be able to be in the classroom just like anybody else. Just because they're disabled doesn't mean they should be not allowed to be in that same room with peers, okay? In 1990, it gets even bigger. In 1990, Congress is going to enact the Americans with Disabilities Act. Bans discriminations against any person with any disability from getting a job, from riding public transportation, from going to public schools, if they need to make a phone call. This is where we finally get interpreters in the classroom. If you're deaf, you have to be provided with an interpreter in the classroom. If you go to the doctor's office, that doctor's office is responsible for providing you with an interpreter. This is why I was able to work as an interpreter for 20 years before I started teaching all you wonderful people, because of this law, because of this ADA. It's ADAs, you might have heard that before. So you also have to have parking spaces where they can park if they're in a wheelchair, or even if they're not in a wheelchair. Just because you see somebody park in a handicapped spot, don't assume, just because they walk out of their car, don't assume that they don't really need that. You don't know what disability they are suffering from, okay? There are many different disabilities. They're going to make sure, mandated, all places, restaurants, anything that serves the public be equipped with ramps so people in wheelchairs can get up and down. This is why you have, like, if you notice even throughout the school building, where the room numbers are in front of the door, by the door to go in, notice that they're also in Braille as well, right? Because blind people need to be able to access these things. And by the way, this person right here is an interpreter. And this is mostly what I did for 20 years. I sat in a classroom and signed every single thing that the teacher and students said. That was my job. It was a good job. I just, teach you wonderful people. So people are going to also this time pay attention to the environment. This is going to become very important. One of the things that Nixon did in office was create all those laws to protect the environment, okay? Americans, they know the damage there is damage being done. That's when people start paying attention to the realization that the ozone layer is being affected from sprays and stuff like that. A lot of different groups and individuals are going to address this. A small community on Long Island learned that officials were using a powerful pesticide called DDT to try to get rid of mosquitoes. And yes, we want them gone, but it wasn't good. It was poisonous. One couple basically contacted local scientists, which confirmed their suspicions, and efforts were underway to ban DDT. And then if you go and buy like bug spray for yourself, if you notice it says on it, no DDT, that's why it says that. A marine biologist, Rachel Carson, writes a best-selling book in '62 called Silent Spring. And this is going to be a book that she's making aware to people, to Americans and people worldwide, that using pesticides is killing fish and birds and other creatures. And so that's when we start, realizing that these things, we've got to do something, we've got to be a people so that people, other people can enjoy these things. So they're going to point to April 1970 as the beginning of the environmental movement, and people are going to observe what's called Earth Day. And guess what? It is almost Earth Day. We remember Earth Day every year on April 22nd. And by the way, just to show you I really am geeky, and if you're interested, this month's issue of Smithsonian Magazine is devoted to the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So if you want to go out to your newsstand and you don't have anything else to do and you want to read it or skim through it, look at the pictures like I do, it's out there. And it has lots of neat stuff about it. It has like lots of maps and graphs, and there's all kinds of neat trivia stuff about it. But it's coming up next week. Earth Day is next week, and it is the 50th anniversary. Let me click myself out here, so I want you to see this picture. See these things right here? Those are the tops of skyscrapers, and I'm going to bet that that's Los Angeles. That's the stuff I grew up in, was smog. I guess I thought I had more pictures on here, but I guess I don't. So I mentioned Nixon signing a lot of acts into place. The National Environmental Policy Act. These are going to create Environmental Protection Agency. It's going to set up pollution standards, promote research, all kinds of neat stuff. He also signs the New Clean Air Act in 1970, standards for factories and automobiles. Up to that point, you could have any kind of exhaust coming out of your truck or car, but now if you drive down the road and you've got a truck, have you ever been behind somebody who drives a diesel truck, and as soon as the red light turns to green, they take off and there's this big black poofy smoke that comes out? That's illegal in California, or at least it was when I lived there. You could get fined for that. They tell you have to have certain things built onto that vehicle in order to not have that come out. So Congress is also going to pass two more pieces of important legislation. We're going to get the Clean Water Act in '72, and we're going to get the Endangered Species Act of '73, all because of this heightened awareness of nuclear energy. I think we're close to the end here, so I know this is more than 15 minutes long, but hang in there. Citizens are going to start to be concerned about the use of nuclear reactors, and if you watch or if ever watched The Simpsons, man, I need to quit talking, huh? then you know, like, because Bart, Dad works at the nuclear plant, and occasionally you see a three-headed fish and that sort of thing. Okay, so people are really worried about this. Supporters of nuclear energy, though, are saying that it was cleaner and less expensive than fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, obviously, they are formed in the earth from old plant or animal matter that is still there: coal, oil, natural gas. In March 28th, 1979, one of the reactors at the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility outside of Harrisburg overheated and basically exploded, basically. So here's a picture of the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So that is the end of that PowerPoint. Yes, we did it. We did it together. See this video link right here? That was already in Schoology. You should have already gotten that part done. This is the top 10 defining moments of the 70s that I got a lot of those back from you, so way to go. I will see you next week, or not really, but you will see me next week when I do the next chapter. If you have any questions, guys, please email me, or email me, get a hold of me somehow. I do have Remind on my phone. Some of you have actually joined it. I think that you were joined to it automatically at the beginning of the school year. I'm really I used it the first year I worked here, but I haven't used it since. So if you are able to contact me that way, that's fine too. I will see it and, respond back. But remember, I don't hear from you with any kind of work whatsoever by Monday at 1 o'clock. I got to put in an F for you for this week, and you don't want to fail, okay? You don't want to fail the 6 weeks, so yeah. So I know, like I said, this is a little bit longer than the last one. My friend wants to say goodbye to you. Yeah, this is Astro. Astro the Astro. Hi, everybody. Hi. I really wanted to teach you because I'm so bored. I'm tired of sitting in the window. No kids are coming by to look at me. Well, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I know that's really cheesy. I miss you guys. Holler at me sometime. Talk to you next time. Life happens.